You have found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, Zach LaVine vows not to impede the growth of the young players. We'll talk a little bit about that plus more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. My name is Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started on with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it, man. So Zach LaVine apparently has vowed not to get in the way of the growth of the young players, and reportedly as well that he has been a full participant in the Bulls team building exercises and things like that. And that's a good thing. He's been a willing participant in the Bulls activity so far. They had a mini camp in Miami. They've gone on team building exercises. We saw the roller coaster pics and things like that. Didn't see pictures of Zach LaVine there, but this one comes out from the New York Times saying this. Now, there's a legitimate questions of how LaVine fits on a team with young talent emerging. But in the offseason conversations with the Bulls leadership, including Coach Billy Donovan, LaVine has vowed not to overstep or stunt the development of younger players, according to a team source. It could be a tricky balance for a player who likes the ball in their hands and is skilled at creating his own, but LaVine has taken the first step by showing up. Now he must show he can play well with others. I don't know about you guys, right? And don't get me wrong. At this point in the offseason, you should hear nothing but positive stories about your team. I would say this. If you hear negative stories about your team and your players at this point in the offseason, leading into training camp, your team is doomed. I'm just going to be 100% frank and honest with you. If you're hearing bad stories about team chemistry, and at this point, everybody should be all kumbaya. Everything should be good. Everybody should be buying in. Everybody should be invested. Because at this point, if we had stories to the contrary of this, if we heard stories that, hey, Zach LaVine actually hasn't talked to any of the young players, he hasn't met Modest Bucilis yet. He hasn't talked to A.K. Eversley since the season ended. It's doomed. It's done. It's doomed. Don't even worry about it. Your season's going to be a failure if that's what you're hearing now. So I just want to be clear here right now that it is a case that this is what you should be hearing, right? And Rob, I see you said Zach was on Team USA. If he were a bad teammate, they would have never asked him to be on this team. That's not true at all. There have been bad teammates that can buy into Team USA because the caliber of players that are there. So that's not true. I get what you're saying, Rob. But there are bad teammates in the NBA that would never be bad teammates on all-star teams or Olympic teams because the caliber of players that are there. But Zach LaVine isn't a bad teammate. I don't know where that came, and that's not the question that we're having here. It's not about if he's a good teammate or not. So I think you're kind of losing the topic there. The topic isn't if he's a good teammate or if he can't be a good teammate. The topic is he going to embrace the youth movement? That's a very different thing. You can be a good teammate, but not necessarily be willing to take a back step to allow the development of the youth movement. That's what we're hearing that. It's a little bit different. Now, through what we've heard already is that Zach LaVine has played in pickup games, and he's already started building chemistry with the young guys in that mini camp in Florida as well, and that several of the veterans picked up the expenses for the younger players already. So good. That's all fine and dandy. Love to hear that. Great. Like I said, this is the kumbaya part of the offseason. Everything leading into training camp should be great. You should be hearing nothing but good stories right now about your team, but you still got to ask that question, right? It's good right now in theory. Now, if the Bulls start losing, is that where things change at? Does Zach LaVine try to take over there? Again, I'm not saying that it will. Hopefully, Zach LaVine comes in right now and he's ready to go. And that just is what it is, that he's ready to go. He's locked in because I think that's best for him. That's best for the team. That's best for the young players. That's best for everybody involved, that Zach LaVine is locked in and ready to go and embracing this new youth direction that the Chicago Bulls have imparted themselves on, going down this path that they did in the offseason. That's what you should want. There's no questions about that. And so hearing this from Zach LaVine, that he specifically talked with Billy Donovan, which we did know that Billy Donovan flew out to L.A. to have a conversation with Zach, that as well as with meeting with the Bulls front office, that he said he's not going to get in or overstep or get in the way of the development of the young players. This is one of the best news that we heard from Zach LaVine, on top of him playing in pickup games and being healthy. We got a bad update from the Florida mini camp that we'll talk about at the end of this show. But overall, where Zach LaVine sits right now, this is the best thing possible. There is a new direction with the Bulls, and this new direction could actually help Zach LaVine quite considerably, right? Zach LaVine having a point guard like Josh Giddey out there with him that can set him up, that can get out in transition, that should make the game easier for Zach, right? Now, there's some balance issues between him and Kobe as both on-ball scorers. Kobe turned into one of the better pull-up players in the NBA from 3 last season, so he's going to need the ball in his hands. Zach would have to embrace a really big off-ball role with the Chicago Bulls, and he's never really had to embrace such a large role coming off the being off the ball as much as what he will theoretically with the Chicago Bulls team. So we'll see how that develops for him as well. Like there's some things that need to fit together, that they need to find a balance. And so if heading into training camp, before you even officially get into the official part of training camp, that he's playing in those pickup games, he's bridging those gaps as far as those relationships, building relationship with those guys. That's all good, because once the training camp is on, once preseason starts, the Bulls got some tough questions to ask themselves about the balance and makeup of the team, right? Over on Chicago Bulls Central today, one of the things that I talked about is who's going to be that player that staggers their minutes and plays some of those, their key part of their minutes out there with the bench unit. Zach LaVine is a big candidate to do that because of his ability to score, because of him being a veteran on this team, how he can make it easier on us not necessarily having the huge firepower coming off that bench from like a big-time scorer. Zach LaVine can embrace that, and that could be the minutes where Zach LaVine is able to be kind of more traditionally him. But whereas he's out there with Kobe, out there with Giddey, he kind of focuses more being off ball. So there's some aspects of this that could really work out for the Bulls and how they're trying to find that balance for their offensive system and philosophies next year. It's going to be a bit tough, right? I want to be clear here. And it comes down to the trust. You also have to have some trust in Billy Donovan, which is another thing that, that I don't have the biggest faith in, is Billy Donovan kind of not just relying on his veterans and prioritizing kind of the youth movement himself. But at least that we're seeing, some of those signs are going into the right direction for those for the Bulls team. And this is what you want to hear right now. Like I said, at this point, if you're hearing bad things, if you're hearing things of players not embracing their teammates or something like that, that's the worst possible position that you can be in at this current point of the offseason. Right now, exactly a week from media day, 8 days away from training camp opening, this is where you want to be. And so let's hope that this continues for this team. And I love what we're hearing here. I like how things are developing for this team. And Zach LaVine, I know he's gone through an offseason where we've tore down Zach LaVine's game. And I'm saying us as a Chicago Bulls media, as sports media in general, it's been a teardown of who and what Zach LaVine is and what he could be, how he fits with teams. Zach LaVine coming and fitting in with this youth movement that we have going on here, helping prioritize and putting the young players in a better position. And some of that is going to come through what Zach LaVine is able to do scoring-wise. I want to make no mistake about it. Nothing in this is saying that Zach LaVine just has to give up shots to help the young players. No, he's going to need to hit the big shots. He's going to need to hit the three. He's going to need to become be a really good three-point shooter for this Bulls team this season, because we're going to need that shooting. We're going to need that spacing out there on the floor, and as well as a LaVine that's locked in. We've seen it. When LaVine is locked in, like I've said many times before, there's only been 9 players that have scored more points than Zach LaVine. He has an elite skill in that, scoring the ball. And if you embrace what these other players can bring, it can help cover up some of those shortcomings. And with around the NBA, around the league, what's been talked about the last 8 months has been Zach LaVine's inability to contribute, or does he contribute to winning in a meaningful way? Those questions being around Zach LaVine, again, in a team that's going younger, if you can show that you can embrace that, if Zach LaVine, and I'm not even saying it is anymore, but if Zach LaVine's goal is to ultimately go on a team where he feel like he can win and compete for a title, this is what he needs to do. And we've known that for a while now. And so I'm sure Zach, Clutch Sports, his agency, Rich Paul, that those guys have had conversations this offseason about how Zach can obtain his goals, whatever those goals are. I'm not here to say what those goals are. I haven't talked to the man. I don't know. But if he's truly trying to reach those goals, this is what you need to do to get there one way or another. And so having that from Zach LaVine could be really big for this Bulls team. And I hope that he is locked in. I hope he's ready to go. And I hope that the Bulls win a lot of games this season. I don't think that they will. You guys know, I've said it. I think between 30 and 34 wins for this team personally. But, if this team is going to go above expectations, you're going to need a Zach LaVine that's locked in. Let's make no mistake about it. Despite some of the talk around Zach LaVine, if this Bulls team is going to be good this season, Zach LaVine is going to be a part of what makes this Bulls team good if they're going to exceed expectations. And so Zach LaVine being locked in with this young core, that's what you want to hear around this time. And let's see what comes of it. Let's see what's built from it, because these team bonding experiences don't mean nothing if we don't have somebody holding these players accountable during the season. That's my thought. You guys can let me know how you guys feel, as always. But with that said, next up, we're going to be talking about an article that listed 3 Chicago Bulls players that are waste of roster spots going into the next season. I'll talk about if I agree or disagree with the guys that they have listed there. But first, we got to get into a message from one of our sponsors, and that is FanDuel. All right, Bulls fans, we've been talking to you guys about FanDuel for a long time. That's America's #1 sports book. We're at a heyday right now of sports. Basketball is about to start. Football is in week 3. We're going into week 4 now. They just came out of week 3. My Bears 1-2 on the season. It's painful. It is what it is. Baseball is still going on. Hockey's gearing up. Like, we're going to everything. The WNBA playoffs are going on. And listen, I don't want to hear nothing negative about the WNBA. Go and check out the WNBA. It's been a great season over there in the W. But we have a different offer from you guys from FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You guys missed out on the NFL Sunday ticket, but they still got something great for you. Again, a $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's what FanDuel is doing for you guys. It's a great deal. Make sure you guys go to FanDuel.com. Again, visit FanDuel.com to get one of the best offers that FanDuel's guys is going to be offering to you guys. Make sure you go and check it out and tell them Locked On Bulls sent you. All right, Bulls fans, with that said, we got an article. You guys know I love this part of the offseason because I'm petty. And you guys know that I'm a very petty individual. I've learned to control my pettiness since being on the Locked On Podcast Network. They've helped me do a tremendous job. That and BetterHelp, which isn't a sponsor on today, but BetterHelp has helped with that as well. But I'm an extremely petty individual. This is around the time I start taking and pulling my receipts, right? This is where you start doing that, because all the naysayers, all the haters, all the little things, jabs thrown in Chicago's way, this is where I like to start saving receipts. So if you guys are petty like me, start saving receipts. This is why I read every article out there on the Chicago Bulls. But I had one that got my petty gene going just a little bit. And that was from Aaron Kellerstraus and 3 Bulls who are pointless to have on the 2024-25 roster. Now, some of these guys I agree with, right? So pull the receipts on me too. Call them up. You got the guys been pulling the Javon Carter receipts on me. I had to eat that. It is what it is, right? But there you go. That's part of doing this game. You're going to win something. You're going to lose something. It is what it is. But this article, 3 Bulls who are pointless to have on the roster. Pulling the receipts. This is what we're doing here. So let's go over it. So Aaron Kellerstraus is listing Bulls players that, of course, are kind of a waste of a roster spot. The first one he has listed here is Chris Duarte, even going so far as to say part of the reason why the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade was a botched deal was they got Chris Duarte back. Now, I don't think Chris Duarte is going to play a whole lot for the Chicago Bulls. I want to be clear here. I agree that I don't think Chris Duarte is going to make a huge impact for the Bulls. I just don't. I think you have a lot of players that are going to be ahead of him on the depth chart at the position that he's going to theoretically play at. But he's 27 years old. He had a really solid rookie year. Since that time, his role has changed every single year to where it's minimized his role in the point where he just hasn't really played in the same level way or had the type of output that he had in his rookie year. And, when players don't live up to their rookie years, it's always a bit of a concern because theoretically, you're hoping that those players are going to actually get better every season than worse after building off a good rookie year. Chris Duarte, to go over that, his rookie year, 13 points per game. He played 55 games, started 39. He averaged 28 minutes per game, and he shot the ball 43% from the field and 37% from three-point range for 13 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal per game. That's solid numbers for a role player, right? That's really solid numbers. Now, his second year in Indiana, He went down to 46 games played, 12 starts, only 19 and a half minutes, 8 points per game, still shooting decently from the field at 31% from three, 37% from the field overall. Then in Sacramento, 59 games played, the most of his NBA career, but only 11 starts, 12 minutes per game, and averaged a little bit less than 4 points per game. So calling Chris Duarte a waste of a roster spot, I can understand this one, right? I don't necessarily agree because I do think that Chris Duarte does have a chance to earn a spot in the rotation. I don't think that he will. I think the players that we have above him and ahead of him on that wing are going to play more minutes than him. You're already doing a 3-guard lineup with Zach LaVine at the 3. You got Ayo coming off the bench. He's going to be your first guard. He can also play some wing. Matas Bucelis, Jalen Smith, those are the 3 guys I think are going to definitely be part of the rotation to make that 8-man rotation. Billy Donovan only typically goes 9 deep. So you're looking at Torrey Craig fluctuating. We don't know what's going on with Lonzo Ball yet. So Chris Duarte being listed here as one of the waste of a roster spot, I can kind of see that. 160 games played in 3 seasons. His minutes has declined every single season since. And we'll see what happens with this. Now, Chris Duarte could be another piece to be included in a trade if the Bulls do make a trade later in the season. If he is, I don't look at that as necessarily a waste of a roster spot, maybe a waste of an asset, but not necessarily a waste of a roster spot. It depends on how that shakes out for the Bulls and Chris Duarte. All right, Aaron Keller-Strauss, I agree with one of your picks here. The next one up is another one that I agree with, and I hate this. I agree with this one. I mean, I love that I agree with it because I hate the player, but it's Jevon Carter. I think we all can agree to Jevon Carter is a waste of a roster spot. Besides his one cousin that comes in here in the chat every once in a while, I'm sorry, but Jevon Carter is a waste of a roster spot. On top of that, you gave him more money than Torrey Craig. A lot of it's guaranteed, so the Bulls couldn't even waive him or come off that deal even if they wanted to. They may very well be stuck with Jevon Carter unless a contender that looked at what Jevon Carter did in Milwaukee comes to calling and they want Jevon Carter. Please, somebody, a contender who wants him, we can give him to you. Miami, do you want him? We can give him to you. It don't even matter. Don't send nothing back. It don't even matter. Send I don't even know. Like, send one of your random rosters dreadlocks back. Just one dreadlock for Jevon Carter. You can have him. We're not worried about it other than that. Fat Joe can come and pick him up too. You guys can come, like, even though he's from New York, he spends a lot of time in Miami. Rick Ross, come and get your boy, whatever. Like, somebody come get Jevon. Who wants him? Denver, Philly, somebody who wants Jevon Carter. We can give him to you. Milwaukee, you're right down the street. Roll up, come pick up your garbage. We can send him back to you. My bad. We took him. We didn't even really want him. But Jevon Carter, I 100% agree with. If you can't tell, I agree with it. Jevon Carter is a waste of a roster spot. But I will say this. Even as much as I don't appreciate Jevon Carter, I will say this. We've seen players before have a bad first season with the new team and they kind of find their way. And maybe Jevon Carter can be that story for the Chicago Bulls. But ultimately, I don't see Jevon Carter playing a huge role for this Bulls team. So you can take the ball headed hole in Jevon Carter and he can go about his business. We don't want him here. The next one is the one that I think, even though I don't have high expectations for him this season, Lonzo Ball. Now, the thing that I disagree with as far as labeling Lonzo Ball a waste of a roster spot is for 2 reasons. A, the circumstances in which he's here, right? Like, I understand that Lonzo, we haven't gotten anything out of him for 2 years plus now at this point. That can absolutely be a waste of a roster spot. Make no mistake about it. But even if Lonzo is not able to go this season, which all signs indicate that he's going to be able to play some this season, how much that's going to be, the minutes, the number of games, all that's all up in air. I understand that part. But Lonzo Ball is an expiring contract. And one of the things that are most valuable at the trade deadline in the NBA is expiring contracts. So even if Lonzo Ball does not play for real this season, him as an expiring contract brings some potential value to the Chicago Bulls. Now, in the potential value area, you have to ask yourself, are AK and Eversley going to take advantage of that potential value? That's a story for another day. I'm not here to dictate that here. I'm not even going to talk about that. So that's a question here as well, right? If they're going to extract some of that value there, if he even can't play by getting creative in a deal. We heard through the offseason that the Bulls were open to moving Lonzo Ball in a larger deal. So we'll see what happens there. But here's the thing that I'll say as well. Lonzo Ball being on your bench, if he's able, I don't care if Lonzo Ball is able to play 14 minutes per game every 5th game. But having Lonzo Ball there in practices, in helping the IQ that Lonzo Ball has there, and I refuse to believe that Lonzo Ball can be on your bench and not talk to some of your young players. That's where value sits in Lonzo Ball. So while some Ball family stands, some Lonzo stands coming here and they act like they want to make it seem and paint it as if Lonzo has a chance to still start and save the Chicago Bulls season, I don't subscribe to that. But I do subscribe to the value that Lonzo Ball, I'll tell you this, the value that even a hurt Lonzo Ball brings to your team is 150% greater than a healthy Javon Carter and what they can bring to your team. 100% of that. So outside of, and I get it, this article is more about value on the court, but I think that Lonzo Ball presents some value for the Chicago Bulls in the future of this team as long as he's able to be on the end of that bench. So, we'll see. We'll see what comes down to that. That's my personal opinion, but you guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. Now, with that said, we got to get into a message from another one of our sponsors. And this one's one of my favorite sponsors because, listen, I'm a guy who likes to be handy. We'll get into it, right? We're going to get into a message from eBay Motors. All right, Bulls fans. So eBay Motors is a sponsor that we have here that I like a lot. So I'm a very handy guy. I like to put things together. I like to do my own oil changes. One thing that my dad imparted on me is that never pay somebody for something you can learn to do yourself, right? That's just something that I learned from my pops. But eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championship is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. The eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Bulls fans. Man, let's get into the last topic for today before we get up out of here, and that is not a good one. Patrick Williams reportedly suffered a setback during the minicamp in Miami. Now, I want to be clear here, a minor setback at that. So it's not anything that right now seems or appears to be something that may impede him hugely a lot in the season. But there are some serious concerns there that, he suffered some discomfort. I'm going to read the exact thing from the New York Times. Patrick Williams experienced discomfort during the team's minicamp in Miami and required additional rest in recent weeks. His availability is the biggest unknown in the short term. Long term, the setback forces one to wonder whether Williams will be able to assemble a breakout season given his lengthy layoff. He last appeared in a game on January 25th and hasn't played much 5-on-5 since. The Bulls signed Williams to a 5-year, $90 million contract this season as a continued show of faith in the number 4 pick in the 2020 draft. So the question here, and this is a bit concerning, right? I've talked about this over on Central. I'm going to talk a little bit about it here, is that the biggest thing with this is that he's barely contributed or played in 5-on-5s, right? That's the biggest concern that I read in this article. A minor, some discomfort, a minor setback, it happens, right? When you suffer injuries. But he last played January 25th. It's September 23rd. We're 8 months removed, and he hasn't played much 5-on-5 in 8 months. That's a bit concerning. And I think that would be a bit concerning for everyone, is that, if he's not, if you're talking about in 8 months, he hasn't played, like we've seen Lonzo for the most part. Lonzo has played in a bunch of 5-on-5. Now, this is against bums, right? We've seen him play against Aaron Holiday over the weekend, but we've seen Lonzo playing a lot of 5-on-5s. If Patrick Williams is barely playing in 5-on-5s, that's a concern. That's a concern. And that's something to look at. Now, again, you guys know I'm not one to fearmonger. I actually hate it. I hate when people use things and just try to fear. Oh my God, what if Patrick Williams doesn't play? What if he's not ready to start by the beginning of the season? Oh my God. I don't care about that, right? I'm not here to do that. there's a high probability Patrick Williams is going to be fine and okay and ready to go by the start of the season. Maybe he's limited. Maybe he starts off on a minutes restriction. The bigger question is that Patrick Williams, a player that the Bulls did play, the fact that they are hoping that he does take a step up because of how things have changed. They're hoping all of this happens. Having somebody who has barely played 5-on-5s for an entire offseason, that impacts that. That changes that some. So we're hoping that that's not the case, right? Let's just hope that Patrick Williams is like he's going to be ready to go, because you want everybody to be healthy by the start of the season. That's what you want. You want everybody to be healthy, especially with as much change as we have on this roster. You want everybody healthy to go. Now, the fact is, let's look at it this way. If Patrick Williams is not ready to go by the start of the season, what does that mean for the Chicago Bulls? Well, I know some people are going to say Jalen Smith can start a power forward. He's your only other big, though. I don't know if they start Jalen and Vooch, because at that point, who's going to play backup center for you? That's a question. Minus Busilis. He's very, very light right now. I don't know if he's ready to play power forward day in and day out. I think he's going to start off playing some small forward. Kevin Durant started off playing shooting guard and eventually moved to the small forward. I think something similar can happen with Modest on the wing. I think he can start off playing more small forward than power forward, but hey, maybe the Bulls are confident in it. You got Torrey Craig there as the veteran. Not too mad at that. You also got Julian Phillips. So we got some options there. Are they great options? Not necessarily. But one could say that Patrick Williams at 9.7 points per game for his career, you're not looking at like a huge thing to replace necessarily if he's not ready to go. And that's a question there. Personally, I wouldn't worry about it yet. Let's get to the start of training camp. Let's see where we are. Right. And let's see where we are with that. If during media day, Patrick Williams, they have some concern because they're going to be asked. Right. And if they dodge the question on Patrick Williams, then I'm going to start being concerned. But until that point, I say, let's not worry about it too much. It's a minor setback. Almost everybody suffers some type of setback when they return from injury, some type. And it's not necessarily saying that he can't play through it. So we'll see what happens when it comes down to that for Patrick Williams ultimately. But I wanted to give that update here on the back end of this episode. Didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but I did want to provide that update. But as always, you guys, especially on the YouTube side, can let me know how you guys are feeling down below. That's my time, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. Locked On Bulls is free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube, the Odyssey app, and Amazon Fire TV. Matter of fact, I want y'all to go and turn us up on Amazon Fire TV. I want Locked On Bulls to be one of the most watched Locked On NBA podcasts on Amazon Fire TV. So make sure you guys go and support us up over there, man. I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll see you lovely and beautiful people tomorrow. Go Bulls. Peace, y'all.